Hey, it's Mark, and welcome back to Clear Path Conversations. If you've been following along with this Path to Green series, you know we've already covered what a path to green is, how to diagnose red flags, and how to write a get-well plan that people actually read. Today we're going to be talking about something that trips up even experienced CSMs, and that's internal alignment. Because here's the thing, you can write the most beautiful get well plan in the world. You can diagnose every risk factor, you can map out every milestone, but if your own team isn't on board, if sales is working against you, if support doesn't know that the plan exists, if product thinks this is just another CSM fire drill, you're dead in the water. I've watched recovery efforts fall apart, not because the plan was bad, but because the CSM tried to execute it alone. And I've also watched recoveries that should have failed succeed because the CSM did the invisible work of getting everyone aligned before ever touching the customer. So today we're going to be talking about how to rally sales, support, product, leadership, everybody behind your rescue plan before you make a single move towards the customer. And this is the work that nobody sees, but it's the work that makes everything else possible. Let me tell you about a retail account that I managed a few years back. It was a major organization, 7-figure ARR, and they were angry. I'd just been handed the account, took a look at it, usage had cratered. The executive sponsor was openly questioning the value. The renewal was 6 months out. Everyone internally knew we were at risk. So I built a pretty solid get well plan, a path to green, put in clear milestones, defined success criteria, specific deliverables. I was ready to take it to the customer and start executing on it. However, before I did that, I spent about 2 weeks doing something that felt like it was slowing me down. I scheduled internal syncs. I walked sales through the plan and I made sure that they understood what I was committing to and also what I wasn't. I looped in support and made sure that they knew this account was getting white glove treatment for the next 90 days. I got product to commit to a couple of small but high visibility fixes that would really show momentum. I also briefed my manager and got executive support just in case things got a little messy. 2 weeks of internal meetings before I ever touched the customer. And you know what? That 2 weeks saved the account. Because when the customer started asking the hard questions, sales had the same talking points that I did. When a technical issue came up, support prioritized it without me having to beg. When the customer asked about roadmap, product had already prepped me with what I could and couldn't promise. We moved that account from red to green in 88 days. And it wasn't because I'm brilliant. It was because I didn't try to do it alone. And that's what this episode is about. So let's start with a reality check. When you're managing an at-risk account, you're not the only person who touches that customer. You're not even the person they remember most of the time. They remember the sales rep who sold them. They remember the support engineer who fixed or didn't fix their last ticket. They remember the product bug that's been open for 6 months. They remember the overpromise that never got delivered. You might be the CSM, you might be the one building the recovery plan, but you are not operating in a vacuum. And here's what happens when you try to execute a rescue plan without internal alignment. Sales hears the customer's frustration and tries to smooth it over with discounts or add-ons that undermine your plan. Support treats the account like any other ticket queue because they don't know this is a priority rescue. Product has no idea you need specific fixes or enhancements to rebuild trust, so they keep working on the roadmap that they already had. Leadership doesn't know you're in crisis mode, so when the customer escalates, they're caught off guard and you lose credibility. You end up fighting internal fires while you're also trying to stabilize the customer. And that's how good CSMs burn out and good accounts just churn away. Internal alignment isn't optional. It's foundational. Let me break down what internal alignment actually looks like in a recovery. First, you need sales aligned. Sales sold this deal. They have a relationship with the customer, sometimes deeper than yours, especially if you inherited the account. They also have a vested interest in the renewal because their comp might be tied to it. But here's the problem. Sales is often working on a different timeline than you are. They're focused on closing the renewal. You're focused on stabilizing the relationship first and then renewing. If you don't get sales aligned, here's what happens. The customer complains to the sales rep. The sales rep, trying to be helpful, promises something that you can't deliver. Or they offer a discount before you've even proven value. Or they tell the customer, don't worry, we'll take care of it, without knowing what it actually is. Now you're managing the customer's expectations and cleaning up promises that you didn't make. So here's how you align with sales. First, brief them on the get well plan before you present it to the customer. Walk them through the milestones, the timeline, the success criteria. Make sure they understand what you're committing to and also what you're not committing to. And be specific here. Don't just say, we're going to fix the adoption problem. Say, we're going to get their APAC team from 40% login rate to 85% by the end of Q3. Here's how. Here's who's responsible. Here's what we need from them. When sales understands the specific mechanics of the plan, then they can have better conversations with the customer. They can say, Mark's working on this with your team. Here's where we are, instead of, we're working on it, which sounds like nothing. Second, agree on who owns what. You own the day-to-day relationship and the execution of the plan. They own the commercial conversation and the renewal negotiation. Make that boundary crystal clear. I've seen this go sideways so many times. The customer complains to the account executive about a technical issue. The AE tries to fix it themselves. Instead of looping you in, now you're hearing about it secondhand. You're behind on the response. And the customer thinks the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Or the opposite happens. You're deep in execution mode. The customer asks about renewal pricing, and you give them an answer that sales wasn't ready to give yet. Now, sales is cleaning up your mess. Draw the lines. Draw the lines and stick to them. And when someone crosses them, have a conversation about it immediately. And then third, establish a communication cadence. And that can be weekly syncs during the recovery period. You update them on progress. They update you on any customer communications they're having. No surprises. I like to do this over Slack or email with just a simple update format. Hey, what shipped this week? What's happening next week? What's blocked? And what I need from you. Takes 5 minutes. Keeps everyone on the same page. And when the customer emails the account executive asking for an update, the AE already knows what to say. And fourth, and this is important, get them to commit to not discounting until the customer sees value. If you discount too early, you're telling the customer their frustration has commercial leverage. That undermines the entire recovery. I had an account at a cybersecurity company where the sales rep wanted to offer a 20% discount at the first sign of renewal risk. I pushed back. I said, give me 60 days to show them value. If we're still in red in 60 days, we can talk about pricing then. We executed my plan. We delivered wins. And when renewal time came, we didn't discount. In fact, we expanded. But if we'd led with a discount, the customer would have learned that complaining gets them concessions. And that's a terrible precedent to set. Sales alignment's not about making them do what you want. It's about making sure you're both working towards the same goal with the same information. And sometimes it's about protecting the integrity of the recovery from well-intentioned but counterproductive moves. Now, next you need support aligned. I've seen this play out so many times. The CSM's working on a recovery plan. Customer opens a support ticket. Ticket sits in queue for 2 days because support doesn't know this is a red account. The customer gets frustrated. They escalate it to the CSM. CSM escalates it internally. Support finally responds, but now the relationship is worse than before. You can't afford that during a recovery. So here's what you do. You make support aware that this account is in active rescue mode. You don't need to share every detail of the get well plan, but you do need them to know this is not business as usual. At some companies, you can flag the account in your support system. At others, you might need to send a direct message to the support lead. However you do it, the message is the same. This account is priority. Response times matter. Escalations need to be fast. Here's what that message looks like in practice. Hey, support team, heads up that we're in active recovery mode with ABC Corp. They're currently red, and we're working on a 90-day get well plan. For the next 3 months, any tickets from this account need priority routing. If something comes in that looks like it might escalate, ping me immediately so we can coordinate the response. I'll keep you updated on the progress. That's it. You're not asking support to do anything they're not already equipped to do. You're just asking them to do it faster for this one account during a defined period. And here's another piece. You need to be support's advocate too. If the customer is filing 5 tickets a day because they don't know how to use the product, that's a training problem, not a support problem. You need to fix that upstream so support doesn't find themselves drowning in preventable tickets. I worked with a financial services account where they were averaging about 15 tickets a week, all basic how-to questions. I ran a 2-hour training session with their admin team, and tickets after that dropped to about 3 a week. Support loved me for it. The customer stopped being frustrated, and I freed up bandwidth to focus on the strategic recovery work instead of playing tech support. Support alignment is a two-way street. You make their lives easier by reducing noise, and they make your life easier by prioritizing response when it really matters. And one more thing, when support delivers, acknowledge it. Send a quick message. Hey, thanks for jumping on that escalation so fast. Customer noticed and it helped. You'd be surprised how much goodwill that builds. And when you need them to go the extra mile in the next escalation, they remember that you had their back. And now let's talk about product. Product is tricky because they're not customer facing, and they're working on a roadmap that was set months ago. Your at-risk account is not their priority unless you make it their priority. But here's the thing, you don't need product to rebuild the entire platform. You just need them to commit to 1 or 2 small, high visibility fixes that show the customer that you're listening. I learned this at a cybersecurity company where I was managing a big government account, major federal agency. They had a list of about 47 feature requests. 47. Everything from minor UI tweaks to massive architectural changes. And every time we met with them, they'd pull out that list and ask where we were on each of those. It was demoralizing for them and for us. So I went to product and said, I don't need all 47. I need 2. And here's why these 2 matter. Here's the business impact if we deliver these 2. And here's the political risk if we don't. The first request was about export functionality. Their compliance team needed to pull data in a specific format for quarterly audits. It was driving them crazy that our platform couldn't do it natively. They were exporting to Excel and reformatting it manually every quarter, driving them nuts. The second was a role-based permission issue. Their security team couldn't give certain users read-only access without also giving them admin privileges in other areas. It was a security gap that they couldn't tolerate much longer. Neither of these was on product's roadmap, but both were relatively small lifts, and both were blocking critical workflows. So I made the case, and product delivered both in about 6 weeks. And when I showed up to the next customer meeting with those 2 fixes live, the customer's entire tone changed. The lead said, "Wow, you're actually listening. I didn't think anyone was paying attention to that list." Now, we still had 45 requests still outstanding, but delivering those 2 created momentum. It shifted the conversation from "you never listen" to "what else can we tackle next quarter?" So that's the power of strategic alignment with product. So here's how you align with product. First, prioritize ruthlessly. Don't bring them a wish list. Bring them the 2 or 3 things that will have the biggest impact on the customer's perception of progress. And be honest with yourself about what actually moves the needle. Not what the customer says is important, what is actually blocking value. And second, frame it in their language. Product cares about usage data, adoption metrics, and business outcomes. Don't say things like, "the customer's upset." Say, "here's the adoption gap, here's the churn risk, and here's how fixing this closes the gap." Give them numbers. If we fix this, we expect login rates to increase by 30% based on what we're seeing with similar accounts. Or this feature request is blocking 3 departments representing 60% of their user base. Product teams respond to data, so give them data. 3, respect their constraints. They have a roadmap. They have resource limitations. If they can't do what you're asking, ask what they can do instead. Maybe they can't build the full feature, but could they build a workaround? Can they prioritize it for next quarter instead of next year? Can they at least document it and add it to the backlog so the customer knows that it's being considered? Now, sometimes the answer is no, and you need to respect that. But at least you tried, and at least you can go back to the customer and say, "Here's what I asked for, here's what product said, and here's the alternative that I'm proposing." Product alignment is not about getting everything you want. It's about getting the 1 or 2 things that move that needle and showing the customer that someone is fighting for them behind the scenes. And now finally, you need to get leadership aligned. And this is the part that CSMs seem to skip the most often. We think, "I'll just handle it. I don't need to escalate unless it's really bad." But here's what happens when you don't brief your leadership. The customer escalates over your head. Your VP gets an angry email. Your manager gets blindsided. And now you're explaining why they're hearing about this for the first time. I saw this happen to a colleague at a SaaS company. She was managing a retail account that was sliding into red. She knew it. She had a plan, but she didn't tell her manager because she thought that she could fix it before it became a problem. Then the customer sent an email to our VP saying they were considering switching vendors. The VP forwarded that email onto her manager. Her manager called her and said, "What the is going on?" She tried to explain the plan, but now it looked reactive instead of proactive. It looked like she was hiding a problem instead of solving one. Her plan was good. She probably would have saved the account, but because leadership was caught off guard, they lost confidence in her, and that made everything harder. Don't do that to yourself. Leadership doesn't need to be involved in the day-to-day execution, but they do need to know that the account is at risk. So they also need to know what you're doing about it and what support you might need from them. Here's what you do. You send a brief, structured update. 1 page, 3 sections. First section, current state. The account is red. Here's why. Be specific but concise. Usage dropped 40% over the last 2 quarters. The executive sponsor has expressed concerns about the ROI. We're at risk for churn at renewal in the 4th quarter. Section 2 is the plan. Here's what we're doing. Here's the timeline. Here's the success criteria. We're implementing a 90-day get-well plan focused on driving adoption in their finance and ops teams. Milestones include weekly training sessions, bi-weekly check-ins with the sponsor, and 2 product fixes from engineering. Success is defined as 85% login rate and confirmed renewal intent by end of Q3. Section 3 is what I need from you, the leadership. Maybe it's just air cover if the customer escalates. Maybe it's executive engagement at a specific milestone. Maybe it's just awareness. For now, I just need you to be aware. If the customer escalates, you'll know the context. If I need you to join a call with their CIO in 60 days to reinforce our commitment, I'll let you know in advance. That's it. You're not asking permission. You're not dumping a problem on their desk. You're informing them and setting expectations. And here's what happens when you do this right. When the customer does escalate, and sometimes they will, even if you're doing everything right, your leadership is prepared. They know the context. They know the plan. They can back you up instead of scramble around. Leadership alignment isn't about asking for permission. It's about making sure they're not surprised. And in a corporate environment, surprises are what get you into trouble. Now, I know what you're thinking. Mark, This sounds like a lot of internal work before I even get to the customer. And you know what? It is. But that's the point. Because the customer doesn't care about your internal dysfunction. They don't care that sales overpromised. They don't care that support is understaffed. They don't care that product is working on other priorities. They care about results. And if you show up with a plan, but your own team is working against you, they're going to see that. They're going to feel it. And they're going to lose whatever confidence they had left. Internal alignment is the work that makes external execution possible. Let me give you a framework for this. I call it the pre-flight checklist. Before you present any recovery plan to a customer, you run through this checklist. 1, sales is briefed and aligned on messaging, milestones, and boundaries. 2, support knows that this is a priority account and they've committed to faster response times. 3, product has committed to at least one high visibility fix or feature that shows progress. And 4, leadership has been briefed and is aware of the recovery timeline and also potential escalation points. 5, you have documented all of this. Recap emails, meeting notes, Slack threads, whatever it takes. Because 6 weeks from now, when someone asks, I didn't know that, what about that? You need receipts. If you can't check all 5 of these boxes, you're not ready to present to the customer yet. And I get it. Sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes the customer is already escalating and you need to move quickly. Fine. Then you do the minimum version of this checklist. You send a Slack message to sales, you flag the account in the support queue, shoot a quick email off to your manager, but you do something. Because going in alone is how CSMs fail. Now, let's talk about what happens when you get this right. When you have internal alignment, here's what the customer sees. They see one unified message. The CSM, the sales rep, and the support engineer are all saying the same thing. They see fast response times. When they open a ticket, it gets prioritized. When they escalate, it gets handled. They see progress. The fixes you promised actually ship. And the features they care about actually get built. They see accountability. When something goes wrong, you don't blame other teams. You own it and you fix it. And here's what you get as the CSM. You get leverage. When you need something escalated, people listen. You get credibility. Leadership now sees you as someone who plans, executes, and delivers. You get results. The account moves from red to yellow to green. The renewal happens, maybe even with expansion. Internal alignment it's not glamorous. It's not the part of the job that gets celebrated, but it's the part that separates CSMs who survive from CSMs who succeed. Let me close with this. I've been doing this work for over a decade. I've managed portfolios worth millions in ARR. I've rescued accounts that everyone said were lost. I've turned red accounts green more times than I can count. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the recoveries that worked were not the ones where I had the best plan. They were the ones where I had the best alignment. The ones where sales had my back. The ones where support prioritized the tickets that mattered. The ones where product committed to the fixes that would move the needle. The ones where leadership gave me the support I needed to execute. You can't do this alone. And you shouldn't have to. So if you're managing an at-risk account right now, here's my challenge to you. Before you present your next recovery plan to the customer, run the pre-flight checklist. Brief sales, flag support, align product, update your leadership. Do the invisible work that makes the visible work possible. Because the customer doesn't care how hard this is. They care about results. And you can't deliver results if your own team is working against you. All right. That's it for today. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about how to tell the turnaround story, both internally and in executive business reviews. How do you narrate the journey from red to green in a way that builds confidence and also sets up expansion? We're going to cover that. Until then, if you want the internal alignment checklist, the pre-flight checklist template, or any of the other resources that we've talked about in this episode or this series, head on over to clearpathcx.com. Everything is there. Follow the show if you haven't already. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And if this episode helped you see something differently, send me off a message. I read everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for showing up and delivering every single day. I'll talk to you soon.